Hey, well, welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. Let me get this set up with just me here. Thanks. Appreciate you joining in on us again tonight. Again, it's another Thursday night with Doom Swords. Here, him and I will talk more about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and some more character creation stuff. Might as well go ahead and bring him on right about now, since you're all probably here to watch him instead of me. So, without further ado, hold on a moment. Let me do this correctly. There we go.
Man, I'm pretty sure they're here to watch you, because last I checked, you got more subscribers than I do. What's up with that?
Pure talent, you know. So.
See, that's what I figured. It does his trick. He likes to play himself down so that you know
I pretend to be
everybody.
humble, so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good evening, Doom Swords. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How are you?
Wow, we're doing awesome. I am on the right side of the dirt,
Nice.
so we are doing good. And I am
Hell
happy
yeah.
because we get to talk about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons yet again. There's very little that makes
Yes,
me
yes,
happier
me too.
than
Absolutely.
AD&D. And as
Uh,
we've
uh,
discussed before, we were going
Agreed.
over special characters, and because
Yes.
with original Dungeons and Dragons, you had the fighting man, you had a cleric, and then you had a magic user, and then they had introduced the thief, and we talked about the thief before. And then after that, some other special characters came in, such as the ranger, the paladin, and included with that was the druid. So we'll talk a little bit about the druid tonight, since they are, even though they're a subclass of cleric, it is a pretty unique uh, character class. Um, they can be a lot of fun. People think they might have some limited use inside a dungeon, but that is not so. Not so. So when I put this up on screen here for us, I got to remove that one. Add to stage. Here we go. I will take that banner out of the way so we can all see it. Alrighty. So we'll read up on here. I made it nice and big so I don't have to keep looking to the side. Druid is a subclass of clerics. They are the only absolute neutrals. See alignment. We probably should have a nice, good, long discussion on alignment and how important that kind of thing is. Viewing good and
Agreed.
evil, law and chaos as balancing forces of nature which are necessary for the continuation of all things. As priests of nature, they must have a minimum wisdom of 12 and a charisma of 15. So they're a little tougher to qualify for, but through the magic of method 3, not all that difficult. Yeah. Both of these major attributes must exceed 15 if a druid is to gain 10% bonus to earned experience. That was one of those things about first edition Dungeons and Dragons, was if you had good attributes, you could gain bonus experience to help you advance in levels a little quicker. So it will be noted the spells usable by druids are more attuned to nature and the outdoors than the spells of other clerics or magic users, but that doesn't mean you cannot use them in the dungeon.
Yeah, and
Uh,
just a quick second back on that, it ended up being standardized that ability score that would grant you 10% bonus XP or whatever. It ended up being standardized to the what was called the prime requisite, and that should basically be in everybody's vocabulary because that persists for a couple of versions and brings it all together. Right. So a druid would have a prime requisite of X value and would gain 10% experience.
yep.
And they almost got there with the druid on this in the language that they used, but not quite.
No, they're still working on it, still tuning it, sorting out what works well. Oh, let's see. Some of the special things that they can do. You know, we had a discussion the other night about characters in general, adventurers are kind of jacks of all trade to a certain degree. They kind of know a little bit of everything. That's how they're able to move around and survive in the world. But then these special characters have some special abilities. Um, and in connection with their nature, worship, druids have certain innate powers which are gained at higher level. Third level, you got to live past first or second. So the old joke is don't name your character until you get to third level. Uh, innate, the initiated of the first circle, druid gains the following abilities: identification of plant type, identification of animal type, and identification of pure water. And we discussed a couple of sessions back about herbs and that kind of stuff, and article in the Dragon magazines as well as the
Right.
notes that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide about different plants and stuff that the characters can encounter. And here we go. We've included a sort of a specialist in that sort of thing. So if you're going to use plants and things like this, that would give Druid definitely certain advantage.
And not to divert too much, but due to a previous comment about wilderness survival guide and some of the stuff we just recently talked about with the orange spines, I've actually rediscovered, because it's been 10 years or so since I opened that book. Wilderness survival guide actually has a pretty robust system for druids in particular, determining whether or not there are natural herbs and remedies around, and a framework for how you might apply that.
We do have a comment here. Love the idea of a druid in a campaign, but in dungeons their spells aren't that effective / useful. I used to think so too until I got a good look at what some of those spells and stuff are. Um,
Some of them
Typical
are
to a
really
cleric,
good, and go ahead.
yeah, I said typical to a cleric, they have all the spells available to them in their prayer book, whereas a magic user has to spend time on specific ones. Um, so druid,
Yeah, and I wish I
yeah,
sorry, I wish I could remember the Dragon magazine, but I mentioned it on one of our episodes or in Discord or something. Uh, Jim Ward had a guide for players. It was in Dragon magazine 30 something or whatever, on how
okay,
to survive, and he's like, "Hey, if I play a druid, I'm bringing a small plant in to the dungeon with me." Because then I can use my plant related spells. So there might be ways around it.
well, I mean, think about it. In a dungeon, you do have things like slimes and molds, right? Although they're the more hazardous types, are a little bit different. But in an underground environment, you're going to have things like fungus and stuff like that. Now, technically, that's not a plant, but you could argue it from the standpoint that the druid kind of maintains control over plants and stuff on that level. Why not fungus and stuff like that in the dungeon as being part of it?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. And without taking it too much farther and breaking things up, I think part of the reason that people don't play druids, at least in my experience, and especially now that I've been going through them in a lot more detail, is that they're misunderstood as inferior, and I
Sure.
always felt that way too. But now I know a little bit more.
This is, yes, we'll grant him this. For overland, they are amazing. Absolutely, yes. For outdoors, they are certainly very, very powerful characters. Yeah. And we haven't got to it, yes, but he's exactly correct. You have to have sprig of mistletoe. Um, Preferably one you picked yourself during the equinox, or if you're going to be casting 50% effectiveness. If you have to buy it, it reduces the power of your spells. It most certainly does.
And well, so it kind of flows into what I was saying about the relative inferiority or lack thereof about the druid is he's not consuming that mistletoe when he's casting his spells. Um,
No, no, exactly. That's available for him to use at
right.
all times, right? Yeah. And a lot of that happens with material components. If you read specifically what the spell description is, it lets you know whether or not you're components and stuff are consumed. Some other things we can look at here. I love the power to pass through overgrown areas, undergrowth of tangled thorns, briar patches, without leaving a discernible trail at a normal movement rate. So they stroll into the woods and nobody would know that they've passed. Other character classes must have use of a spell in order to do so. See what else we got here. Immunity to charm spells cast by any creature basically associated with the woodlands, dryads, nixies, sylphs, etc. Satyrs and all that kind of stuff, right? So they have less of an effect. Ability to change form up to 3 times per day, actually becoming in all respects, save the mind, a reptile, bird, or mammal. And which has now subsequently been absolutely totally ruined by the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Because everybody wants to be an owl bear when they change now, right? Each type of creature form can be assumed once per day. So if you change into a cat, you can only change into that once for that day. The size of the creature form assumed can vary from as small as a bullfrog, blue jay, or a bat to as large as a large snake, eagle, or black bear, about double the weight of the druid. So you could change into a little mouse, sneak into the, squeeze underneath that dungeon door, go on inside and unlock it from the inside. Each assumption of a new form removes from 10 to 60% d6 multiplied by 10 of the hit points of damage, if any, the druid has sustained prior to changing form. So changing form into an animal or something like this is kind of like a heal. Restores some hit points and stuff. 3 times per day, too. That's awesome. Druids have their own secret language. Here's another one we get into secret language. Much the same as thieves have their thieves' cant. Druids have a similar type of language that they can use to communicate with one another. Druid also gains a language of his choice. I'd hate to use the word learn, but that would probably be your process of training, is picking up another language like Centaur, your Dryad, Elvish, if you haven't already started with it, Gnome, any of these that they consider woodland or natural creatures.
Right.
Yeah. Melee combat druids flight as clerics, but they do suffer somewhat from their inability to wear protective armor of metal. Right. Whereas clerics can wear chainmail or plate mail if they wanted to. But they likewise make saving throws as clerics, but against fire and lightning, electrical attacks, they get a bonus of +2 on their dice rolls because of the natural type of the that element that it is.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a pretty fair trade-off.
Sure, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. All right, druids can use those magic items not otherwise prescribed, which are for all classes, and those for regular clerics, which are not written. The books and scrolls and stuff. Right. Good and handy stuff to keep around.
Right.
Upper levels, there's only limited number of characters. Here is where things get difficult for the druid, is for the having to challenge druids of further levels up in order to gain advance in the ranks. Right, here's where a lot of players start to have difficulty with it, having to challenge somebody. If you don't make it, you don't advance. Whereas those limitations aren't there for fighters, for example. They are there for monk. I think we hinted at that, or maybe discussed a little bit last time we were talking about monks, whereas they must, just the same, druids have got to challenge the guy above them in order to take that position. All right. So there's your chart, there's your spells that are available. We can take a good look at. Well, here we go. Here's a good key point there. Druids as a class don't dwell permanently in castles. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to stop you there for a second, because this is
Sure.
one of those things that people don't realize, because it's just in a table. But the druid, you go up a little, back to the druid's
Sure.
spells. A couple of things. One thing that's not stated but is stated elsewhere is that druids do get the wisdom adjustment for number of
Ah,
spells.
right.
But notice something about the druid here. He starts with 2 first level spells plus wisdom adjustment, and then his second level, he gets a second level spell. Okay,
Sure.
so that's absolutely huge. I mean, yeah, his experience points. He has to get 4,001 experience points in order to gain second level versus what the cleric's cleric has to get
Hmm.
6,001 to gain third level. So 6,001 at third level, the cleric's going to be able to cast 1 first level spell and 2 first level spells and 1 second level spell. And at a level lower, the druid's going to be able to do the same.
Right. And just to make a note here, and this is really important when it comes to old school Dungeons and Dragons, is the druid can gain neutralize poison, which is a third level druid spell at level
Right.
3. That is a very useful and potent spell. Clerics have to wait till fourth level to get it, or fourth, where they can run fourth level spells, which would be scrolling up to the table,
Level 7. Yeah.
level 7. That's a long time to wait for that
Right.
particular spell.
And that's worth mentioning in general. I assume now it might be the time to do it. Is that the cleric and the druid and the magic user and illusionist, they share a lot of the same spells, but
Sure.
those spells have varying arrangements, segment casting times, all sorts of things that you should use in your own games, and they come at different levels. So the
Hmm.
assumption, basically, from my perspective, would be that the druid is really a cleric, the only cleric that can be true neutral, and his nature or the cleric's nature related spells come to the druid beforehand, if they even come to the cleric at all. And I didn't like the way that 2E just made it pre spells and certain whatevers. I'd much
Yeah.
prefer what's going on here because some
Oh, yeah.
things that the druid can know are off limits to the cleric, as well they should be, and the
Hmm.
same thing goes, relatively speaking, for illusionists and magic users.
And if they do get any of those sort of spells at all, they tend to be at much higher level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, good, useful spells for in dungeons. Fairy fire, invisibility to animals. Those are giant rats, right? A couple of useful ones. Even pass without trace. Well, I would have give you an option on that inside the dungeon. Now, predict weather, maybe not quite so useful, but Shalala, speak with animals. Bark skin is fantastic. They can't wear armor, but they can bark skin, right? That's useful at any environment. They do gain cure light wounds at second level, whereas a cleric gets it at first, but at least they do have the ability to begin healing. Heat
You're right,
metal
but
is
they
another
also get feigned
insanely
death.
useful. Yeah.
Yeah, they get feigned death at second, and they get heat metal at second,
Hmm.
and when those things are provided to others, and warp wood is insane. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
mentioning these things now because I'm trying to finish this clarified SRD on this stuff, and these spells are right in my mind.
Yep.
Warp wood is exceptional. I mean, at second level, a druid can permanently warp even a magical wand or something to that extent, which is
Yeah.
which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Let's talk relation specifically being in a dungeon too. Well, we didn't bring a thief with us. Have no fear. Warp wood on the dungeon door. Okay, we're in. Yeah. So
Right, right. Yeah, and
yeah.
there's an area of effect associated with it based on level, and
Mhm.
a lot of the spells aren't really clear, but once you break them down into their
Mhm.
pieces, you kind of see how the puzzle fits together.
Yeah, cold lightning, and not quite so useful in the dungeon where there's no clouds. But then again,
Right.
not everything equates to being ultra powerful and that kind of thing. Here's that neutralized poison we were mentioning. Protection from fire, kind of useful. Stone shape. Summon insects. There's got to be bugs inside a dungeon. There you go, right? So there are some
Right.
spells in here that would be useful. So we could, take advantage of them in a dungeon environment. So they're not useless taking them underground. Yes, granted, there's some limitations to what they can do. Whereas those sort of same limitations wouldn't be there for some other spellcasting classes, but they still do have some. Stone shape is a DM's nemesis. Let's see. Well, you made some comments here. Let's look at it. Only spell that can absolutely save a PC from being poisoned in AD&D. A slow poison doesn't solve the issue. No, it just extends it, gives you chances for additional saving throws. You can still
And
fail those saving throws. Yeah.
yes, and one other thing that slow poison does is if you are unconscious and under the effect of poison but not dead yet, slow poison will return you to a single hit point and ensure that you never fall below that. But these are the things you find out when you really dig through these things. Um,
Right.
and if you're conscious, it won't let you fall below one hit point and become unconscious. So it's actually a really excellent spell, but it is not nearly like neutralized poison.
Yep. Heat metal is very underrated for druids in a dungeon. Yes. Well, I mean, everybody else is wearing metal armor. They can pay for it.
Yeah,
Right? Stone
yeah,
shape
chill
is
metal
DM's
too.
nemesis. Yeah. Stone shape could cause some issues for a dungeon master. Yeah. I'm getting some other questions and stuff popping up here on Discord. Let's see what else we got there. Isn't there we go. Pretty much it for statements and questions and stuff in here. All right. Can't resist this puns always. The Arch Druid. Yes. That's the guy that makes all those fancy little decorations at weddings that go across the top things and stuff, right? Never mind. All right. So there's a quick rundown of the Druid. If you have anything else you might want to make a remark on about the Druid and stuff, I think it is definitely an underrated character. People assume that it's pretty much locked to the outdoors and would be useless elsewhere, and that's not necessarily the case.
The only thing that I would add is that particularly in one druids have to have a deity. Okay, so it's not like when you're creating your character, it just worships nature, and that's where its spells come from. Its spells come from the same source that clerical spells come from,
Right.
and that would be its deity. So in Greyhawk, that might be what Ola Damara, Forgotten Realms, Faerun, whatever. That would be Sylvanas, I think, and whatever your campaign is. But the druid has a deity. Otherwise, the acquisition of the druid spells are
Mhm.
uh, com- completely the same as the cleric spells.
Yeah, in the campaign, the Monday night game I'm running, I'm largely using depending on what region and stuff you're starting at, using Celtic or Norse or Greek, and even Egyptian would be available to player characters and stuff. So you can
Right.
see somebody choosing a druid actually wanting to pick the some of the Celtic deities as ones that they would worship because it kind of makes sense in that case. Here we go. Can't finish the castle without an arch druid. Yeah, exactly right. See, they're a critically important character for the campaign. All right, the illusionists. We'll talk a little about the illusionists. Illusionists form a subclass of magic users, and in most respects, they conform to the characteristics of the latter. Right? They're magic users. You know, they cast arcane type spells. To be an illusionist, the character must have a minimum intelligence of 15 and a minimum dexterity of 16. A high manual dexterity is required in casting the spells used by this class. They are um, David Copperfield and stuff like that, right? They got to be able to. They got to be good at kind of like sleight of hand type things to in relationship to their spells to get these illusionists formed. So, as a magic user, they're somewhat tough to qualify for because those are some fairly high statistics. They needed to get two of them. Uh, Here we go. The important difference between illusionists and magic users is that the former do not gain any experience bonus for having high scores in their required abilities of intelligence and dexterity. Here they're getting towards the prime requisites because now they're calling them required abilities. They're slowly moving in that direction of the terminology. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though you've got exceptional abilities to qualify you for the class, you do not gain bonus experience. Same thing like was with the monk, do not gain bonus experience despite having adequate abilities to get the class. While being equal, even slightly inferior to normal magic users in most respects, illusionists have different and highly effective spells to employ. Yeah, we'll take a look at illusionist spells here in a little bit. Um, Power illusionists, due to their spells, is offset, however, by the limitations placed upon the magic items they can use. Right? There's only so many that you can grab. All potions not restricted to fighters only. They can use illusionist scrolls and magic user scrolls, which contain spells usable by illusionists. Um, they do gain some first level spells a little bit later on for magic user spells. All rings, they can use all rings. A rod of cancellation, a staff of striking, wands of enemy detection, fear illusion, of course, magic detection, metal and mineral detection, secret door and trap detection, wand of wonder. Everybody wants the wand of wonder, right? Yeah. And so miscellaneous magic items usable by every class of characters, crystal balls, but not with any added powers. Just crystal balls of seeing that kind of stuff. All robes, excluding robe of the archmagi, since they are not magi, they can't wear the robe of the archmagi. Of course, there now that we're talking about arches, the archmagi, I guess, would be the guy who magically puts the stones up above the doorways in the keep. Yeah. And books and similar written works readable by magic users. Yes. Artifacts which are not proscribed items with respect to illusionists, such as armor, swords, or axes. Right? Since you can't wear armor when you're casting your spells, you can't use the magic armor when it comes to it. Magic daggers. They can gain use of magic daggers because they are extremely limited on what weapons that they have available to them to use. They are capable of manufacturing those magical items which create or sustain illusion and may do so at 10th level, the illusionist and above. This is done in much the same manner as which regular magic users create magic items. And all that is explained out in the Dungeon Master's Guide for crafting items. It isn't something that everybody gets right off the bat. They have to wait a little while to get to it. Their spell list basically kind of mirrors the way a magic user's kind of progression goes. Right. Let's scroll down to the illusionist spells. Some of them are kind of neat. All right, get all of them on there. Now they go to 7th level, but they don't go all the way to 9th level like magic users do. But there's some good ones. Now, you might notice some of these are similar to magic user spells that are on higher magic user lists, but the illusionists get them at a little bit lower level. You know, detect illusion is a first level spell for illusionists, whereas it's a second level spell for a magic user.
Right, and they do get a few that a magic user could only hope to have. But one thing that happens with illusionists, if it's illusion, phantasm, school, a lot of times it will take, it might not have a component, like it might not have a material component that the magic user version has. It might take less segments to cast, might have a longer
Mhm.
duration, bigger area of effect. So there's some granularity in there as well. And the same holds for druid versus cleric. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in there that's actually really important.
An insanely powerful first level illusionist spell, Gaze Reflection.
That's really good. And as a matter of fact, and I do want to address that comment too, but as a matter of fact, hypnotic pattern in second level, I've found to be um, quite spectacular.
Sure.
Because if you have, say, a gnome, this is the only reason I could ever think of playing one of these. But if you have a gnome illusionist thief, hypnotic pattern doesn't have a verbal component. So dude can sneak up in there, moving silently,
Yep.
and he doesn't even have to say a word, throw up a hypnotic pattern, and then everything's stunned for the duration, and the rest of the party closes in and wipes them out, which is pretty remarkable for third level. That's one of the only examples of that I've seen, but
As far as I
it's
know,
impressive.
every other class has verbal components on all of their spells that I can recall. I don't recall any off the top of my head that don't. Now, well, some of them may be
Right.
verbal only if they're limited on their
Sure.
you know component. But as far as I can recall, all of them have to have some sort of verbal component to them.
I think let me look real quick, but I think what's his face? Druid has invisibility to animals that
Yes,
doesn't
yes.
have a verbal component. But that's the
Oh,
only
is
one
it
I can
not?
recall.
I'd have to look at the spell. You're looking it up. I mean, I could find it, but
Yeah.
the way these spells are indexed is a little tougher.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking it up because I put them all in a database for
Ah,
my forthcoming project that I shall not use Great Old One's channel to plug. Yeah, so we've got Shadow Door by the Illusionist, level 5 spell, has no verbal component. Invisibility to Animals by the Druid has no verbal component. And Hypnotic Pattern by the Illusionist has no verbal component. Um, every single other spell has at least a verbal component.
okay. Let's see. Some super useful spells in this particular list and down at low levels. Um, Fog Cloud, highly useful if you're trying to get away. Mirror Image is a fantastic defense spell. Now, with newer editions, all arcane casters get like blur and mirror image. In first edition AD&D, no, they did not. Um, Look up the magic user spell, right? Best you got out of this is blink. You got mirror image at second level, but blur is fantastically useful and
Yes.
not in that list. Yeah, it's just an illusionist kind of thing. All right, so they got some unique stuff that they only could do that was very special and useful for them.
Right.
What we also might want to make a note here that illusionist spells are not acquired or learned in the same way as magic user spells are. Right? Notice there is no read magic in the illusionist's spell
Yes.
list. Right? Their spells are all written in a special language that only the illusionists know, and that's all they have to learn as far as their spell casting and acquisition and stuff goes.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's a very good point. So you can almost think of the illusionist as being like the thief or druid in that they have their own. arcane language. Maybe higher level illusionists understand more of that language than lower level illusionists, but
Hmm.
it's opposite, like the common idea of fancy and magic.
Right. And some of their higher level spells are just brutal.
Oh yeah.
What do we got
One of the
here?
problems is, one of the problems is that people, you know, it's kind of hard to understand. Going back to Cooley's comment from before, it's disbelief really should have been more understood. It should have been spelled out somewhere in the rules, because I think there's one of the illusionist spells that does it quite well and in a different way. It's for each intelligence point above 12, you have, and I think it's percentile die. You get an additional 5%, but that's based on you saying you disbelieve that spell. The vast majority or the remainder of them are if the player states he disbelieves the illusion and doesn't think it's real, then he gets a saving throw, and that's the only way that he gets a saving throw.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the other thing is too is my first question would be, well, why do you think you would not believe that that was real? Right. Explain it to me why, and then I'll
Right.
go ahead and give you the saving throw. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
just
yeah, and
because,
that's and
yeah.
yeah, and that's one thing I like about the one that ties it to intelligence score, because
Yeah.
maybe the character is going to understand something that's going on in the dungeon that the DM has either not explained because he hasn't thought about what the character's thinking. There's a certain amount of
Hmm.
internal knowledge of the dungeon that I'm okay with dealing with without making it all, passive perception and whatnot.
Sure. Well, let's see. Not a whole lot more we can go in on the illusionist other than if somebody wants to play an illusionist, I will absolutely let them play it because it could be a whole lot of fun.
I actually want to play. I don't think I could do the gnome, just for yeah. But
No,
I might not mind playing the human illusionist.
well, you don't think you fit the type of a gnome illusionist? No,
No, I just don't think I can bring myself to do that.
he's just a funny dwarf, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind being a dwarf. That's just like whatever. All I'm doing there is taking my real person and just changing my height.
Right. So you're dwarvish, you like to say here. Here we go. We got to the spot. The assassin.
The
Now, this was
assassin.
a character class that, because of the controversy with the Satanic Panic and all of this stuff, and they were trying to um, regenerate some goodwill and stuff with the game, that this got dropped from second edition. The assassin and the monk did as well. Got dropped away out of probably the monk because it wasn't quite so powerful, and they were having maybe some troubles trying to figure out how to make it fit with what their plans were with second edition. But the assassin went away strictly because of what it is. Subclass of thieves, and they have functions of the latter as well as their own. Thus, to be an assassin, the character must have a minimum strength of 12, and intelligence of 11 or more, and a dexterity score of not less than 12. So you have three ability scores that you need to gain um, at least average ability in, which makes it a little tougher depending on the type of die rolling conventions you're using. Assassins do not gain any experience bonuses for having high ability scores. Again, here's another one, a special character, special type that does not gain bonus XP for having high abilities. Whereas the Druid did, these other two special characters do not. Just as do thieves. Assassins have six-sided dice for determining the number of hit points they can sustain. Assassins are evil in alignment, perforce, as the killing of humans and other intelligent life forms for the purpose of profit, basically held to be antithesis of weal. Yes, there. Here you go. Let's go fetch the dictionary. That's Gary Gygax. That's the way he wrote these books. But yeah, it's your profession is killing. You're not. That's in and of itself is not very good. They can, of course, be neutral as regards lawful and chaotic evil. As I mentioned above, assassins have thieving capabilities and their own ability functions because they can use any sort of shield or weapon. They are generally superior to thieves in combat, right? Because the thieves, again, were limited in this edition. The assassin was not, as far as weapons and stuff go, so they could do a little bit more and stuff with it.
They still did only have the one every 6 levels
Well,
advancement on the Matrix.
sure, but you could start out with a
Or
bow.
one every 5.
You could start out with a bow,
Yes,
whereas the
yes.
thief could not. Yeah. Assassin's character need not be a member of the Assassin's Guild of the town or city where he or she dwells in, but all non-player assassin characters are members of such guilds. Yeah. One such guild in most towns and cities, so he's kind of giving you some idea here how to set up a campaign for use of these characters. Any assassin discovered in the guild area who is not a member of the local Assassin's Guild will be invited to join and thus coming under the authority and command of the guild master. However, if you don't join, they're not going to be happy with you. Yeah. So here's one way of coming up with some recurring villains because you've refused to join the Assassin's Guild. They're now going to chase you down. Yeah. Primary function of assassins is killing. They may use poison, ingest, or insinuated by weapon. Poison ingested must be put into the food or drink, and the character performing this action must detail exactly when, where, and how the poisoning will to be done. Right? You can't just say I'm poisoning. This is one of those games where you got to be a little descriptive for it. Use your imagination. This is a game to drive people to use their imaginations and stuff. And if we kind of force the issue on them, they can be imaginative about it.
Yeah, and that's really no different than anytime a player wants their character to know something about a secret door, a chest, how the floor feels in front of them, what the ceiling looks like, all of that stuff.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, all non-assassins within 10 foot of the bared weapon will have a 10% cumulative chance of per melee round. Every minute of noting the poison and attacking the poison, using assassin and/or calling for city watch. Yeah. Hey, that's not a good thing to do. Shut up. Yeah.
Look at the percentages.
Assassins attack on the same combat tables as thieves do, including backstabbing. However, if they surprise a victim, they may attack on the assassination table. Right here is a special thing for just assassins. Where's that at here? Well, minimum fees for assassination. Where was that's a little further down. Or no, the assassination table is actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
It is.
Right. I'd have to open it up and pull it up so we can take a quick look at it here. Let me see.
Yeah, page 75.
I didn't have it already ready to go.
Yeah, that other table was the fees for
Yeah, the
assassination.
fees, yeah.
Yeah.
Where they could charge for assassinations and stuff. So give you an idea of how much it would cost you to get one. Alrighty. What
Right.
page did you say it was again?
75, sir.
Oh, that's right, after the combat tables.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, scroll. Up. Come on. Cooperate.
Yeah. I hate when PDFs do that. There you go.
All righty. Again, this is based on pretty much, level of the assassin, level of the intended victim. Right? You had to be able to get surprised. So similar to the rules for sneak attack, is you can just walk up to somebody out in the open, walk around their backside and get a backstab on them, especially if somebody is, if you're in combat or something, or they're aware of something that's going on, that spoils that sort of thing. So this would be attack from hiding. Um, Percentage shows is that for success, instant death under near optimum conditions. Right, you may adjust slightly upwards for perfect conditions, absolute trust, asleep, unguarded, very drunk and unguarded, and must deduct points if the intended victim is wary, takes precautions, and/or is guarded. Right. So there's some fairly decent chances. I mean, at low level, 25 and 35% is actually not terrible for outright killing a higher level character with one blow right off the start.
Yeah, and there's something here that's really worth mentioning. Remember how we've talked numerous times about stuff being buried in the footnote? They even put an asterisk on this one, and then if we look at the asterisk, we can see it says or attacks on helpless opponents by any character class. So
Right.
if we assume that the Dungeon Master's Guide supersedes anything that came before, a helpless character only has a percentage based on level to kill that helpless character outright. Now, sleep might be a special exception, like a sleep spell or something. But if somebody's just sleeping and you try to kill them, you would use, maybe in that case, you would use this table
Sure.
as an attack on a helpless character. Helpless, stunned, whatever types of words they use to indicate that
Mm.
an opposing character is unable to do something. Uh, You only find it here on the assassin's table, which is
Right, and it's pretty
interesting.
common. Oh, we put everybody to sleep, so let's go coup de grace them, or they're all paralyzed. Let's do let's kill them outright because they're paralyzed, or we tied them all up, so we'll cut their throats. Well, here's a table that you could use to govern the chances of success of that.
Right.
Yeah. Notes gathered from other sources in this box. Yes. Performing an assassination will gain experience points for the character awarded for both the fee paid and on the level of the victim. So you get your XP because you got the money, and then you got your XP um, for the killing of whatever it is. And these awards are determined by the referee and basis the formula given in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. Yeah, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a calculation to determine what the experience points value of a particular monster would be. A certain base value plus a certain amount per hit points and stuff, adjusted based on special abilities and stuff like this. Because not only was the game um, XP for gold, but it's also XP for defeating opponents. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here for the assassin. It was a very detailed character class. Cannot have any
Right.
hirelings until she attained fourth level. So early on, and remember that I think I don't know if we've had a discussion on this channel, but we've discussed it before, where lower level characters they just hired companions to go with them because there was safety in numbers. The
Right.
assassin can't actually do any of that until they reach fourth level. Let's see. Upon retaining eighth level, character may also include thieves amongst his or her hirelings. At 12th level, a character may hire any class desired. Right. So it wouldn't be unusual to see higher level assassins with magic user companions or something.
Yeah.
Only neutral or
They
evil
got to
characters
be
were
real high level.
Yeah,
12th level. It's brutal.
yeah. Got to live that long, right? An assassin's life is a short one. Let's see. Of
Yeah.
course, neutral or evil characters will serve an assassin. For numbers of henchmen is dictated by the character's charisma score, right? For your followers. Um, in order to gain experience above 13th, you have to have the experience points, and then you have to assassinate the local guild master. So here we go with another character class that must fight their way to the top as opposed to just advancing all the way through, like your
And he doesn't
man
just
at
have
arms
to
fight.
defeat him, he has to assassinate him.
Assassinate him,
The guild master,
right?
the
But
one,
how do you
right?
assassinate
Or the
somebody who's
local one.
lived? Yeah, he's gotten there
Yeah.
somehow or another. He's got some protections, right?
Right.
Right. Headquarters of the guild is always large town or big city, right? There's not enough people out to do one any out in a smaller area. And this came up in a discussion before, and I think it's worth kind of mentioning here. Isn't James Bond basically an assassin? Is he evil or is he good? That so I don't see anything in here that says anything about if your alignment is changed, you no longer can function as an assassin. Now that's specific
Right.
to ranger, specific to paladin. Ranger, if you lose good, you can no longer be a ranger. You're just strictly a fighter. If you lose lawful good as a paladin, you are strictly as a fighter from there on out, never to return, right? And
Right.
that's missing from here. If you start out as you got to be evil, can you actually drift into another alignment and still maintain the abilities of an assassin? And
I think that I've read stuff in Dragon and Polyhedron that say that you can, and
right,
you won't lose those skills. Whereas if those are requirements for the class, like Druid must always be true neutral,
sure,
Ranger must always be a good alignment, and
yep,
those sorts of things, they're a function of the class as a whole and it being able to operate. But there's
yeah,
nothing here that says assassin must be evil, and if he's not evil, then he forgets how to assassinate. You know,
right, yeah,
that stuff also happened in Troika's Temple of Elemental Evil game, which was a really cool game with the Circle of Eight mod pack, and now it's been re-released with that included. But that game will kill you,
I could never get it to run
just
with the
like
Circle
Village
of Eight
Envoy
mod
will.
pack, but I played it. I loved the game. I liked the interface a little bit better, and I never had the assassins come chase after me. Um,
Yeah, and now they've got it. So if you get the one that's on Steam right now, they've brought it back and integrated all the mods that the community made into it.
okay,
I
because
haven't played that version yet.
I know there is a Keep on the Borderlands mod for it.
Yeah. They made a bunch of well, several old AD&D modules.
Yeah. Well, there's the assassin. All right.
Yeah, every time I hear every time anybody says assassin, it might just me, but be me, but particularly when I'm looking in the player's handbook or whatever, I think of the Assassin by Iron Maiden, which was off a not very good album, but you know,
Okay.
better watch out, cause
I
I'm
think of
the
the Sentinel
assassin.
in from Judas Priest. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a much better song than the Assassin is.
Well, that pretty much covers the
That's like
leftover
Pete.
special characters that we missed from the other weeks. We've had some excellent comments on here and stuff about them.
Yeah, agreed.
What else can we cover on this stream as in addition to just these sorts of things here? Let's kind of rounds out what we wanted to talk to as far as character generation and stuff goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't. I mean, I think we've talked about most of that stuff, haven't we?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think we went over thieves all that much as far as their abilities
yeah,
go
they're
because of being special. I
yeah,
mean, we
thieves'
mentioned them, we talked about
abilities,
them,
right? And then the
but
race of the thief makes a difference, and then
yes,
the dexterity can also make a difference,
right, because there's a
and
dexterity
that
table.
all
Yeah,
got changed. Yeah, that all got changed in our Unearthed Arcana when they finally decided that thieves were allowed to wear studded leather armor or any armor to perform their abilities, and there would be an armor check penalty, uh, in essence, related to that. You know,
right, because
the yeah. So you
early
could
on,
conceivably try to do something in chainmail armor in Unearthed Arcana, and you would
sure,
just have a minus percentage chance to do it. Um, and that's the other thing. PHB says thieves are only allowed to wear leather armor.
yep,
Do
that's
you
it,
think that's
strictly
an
leather.
omission, or do you think that that's reasonable?
I think that's absolutely well. What would they
Because leather
consider
is like,
leather?
boiled.
Yeah, the boiled,
You know,
the cure
rigidity.
boilie armor boiled in oil and stuff like this to making it hardened up and stuff. Um, but it's not built and assembled and worn like plate mail is. It's more or less along the lines of basically like a breastplate with padding and stuff like this on the limbs and stuff like that. To picture it in my mind, right?
Right, right.
So there's where leather would be okay as far as I would be concerned. Heavy padding with hides and stuff like this would be another one. Provide you some protection, but not be as restrictive on your movement.
Right, right.
Yeah. Now, like we mentioned earlier, it isn't that a regular character couldn't attempt to climb a wall, right? You're considered to be able to do most sort of athletic feats and stuff like this as the nature of being an adventurer. It's just that thieves are able to do so under circumstances where you would say absolutely not to a regular character. That wall is practically smooth. There's you no handholds or anything like that for you to find in your gauntleted fist, whereas the thief with his nimble fingers and stuff like this has actually got some training and able to scale walls and stuff that would normally be unassailable. We mentioned the hearing noise. Now this is a little bit more of a special on hearing noise. This is an active listening for certain things, whereas just a hearing check on a regular character. We talked about that with the being keen-eared individual or something. A regular character as a human, for example, what is it? A 1 in 20 chance of just hearing a noise. That's 5%. Whereas the thief, even at first level, starts at 10% plus any ability he gets um, that might be part of his racial bonus.
Yeah, and I think I looked at this before to draw a comparison and found that basically the thief, at least at first level, was equal with his race of the thief modifiers, equal to a keen-eared individual of that race.
Sure,
So those tables would actually tie together, right? So a keen-eared elf uh, would have a 4 in 10 chance or whatever, right? Because that table's broken down by race, and but the thief is actually able to improve, and like you said, hear things that are beyond the ken of a regular individual. I would say, right?
sure. Um, Find and remove traps. I mean, I'm perfectly okay with a regular any character, a fighter. Hey, I want to go look around, see if I can spot a trap or something in this hallway. I am perfectly okay with them trying that. I will give them a reasonable chance of doing so. But the thief character is trained in that sort of thing is going to have a better chance of
Yes.
locating a trap. The way fighters typically find traps is they stomp their way down the hall, and when they set it off, say, "Here it is." Yeah. Yeah. So
And
there's
look at
some.
some of those scores, right? So like find remove traps, which you were just talking about.
Yeah.
You get up to what's a good example? Like even 10th level, right? You've got a 65% chance of
Adjusted.
every normal trap, yeah, adjusted, no
Yeah.
less. Particularly if you're a gnome, right? Assuming that you could reach that level.
Yeah.
Um,
Dwarfs have a
Gnomes
really
might
good
be
chance of
unlimited.
finding and
Yeah.
removing traps. Yeah.
Right, right. Because thief is one of those that I think is more available to be unlimited in level among the
Yes.
races than anything else. Right.
Yeah. Every race can be unlimited in the thief except for half orc. Half orc can be unlimited as an assassin.
Nice.
Right. And that always people have always questioned that. Why? Why? How come the dwarves? That's what they do is they go fight orcs and stuff. Why can they be unlimited in thieves and not be unlimited as a fighter instead? Those were the
Right.
game balance things that they were talking about. You know, 20th level dwarf thieves aren't going to run the world.
Yeah, yeah. Because they would. I mean, look at the half orc, right? So he a half orc would have what 104.7% chance of just climbing regular walls.
Yeah,
Why not just have a whole, at level 17, right? Why not just create a crew of level 17 half orcs and have them destroy every castle known to mankind?
yeah, sure. They very
They
well
just
could,
climb the walls.
right? But no, they not that. Well, that's not to say you couldn't have evil elves or gnomes or any of those other classes. Still, I can't
Right.
picture an evil halfling. Sorry, it's just not my thing. Yeah.
No, no. Same.
Here's where they talk about the thieves' cant again. Um, Creating this particular special character, I guess, it seems to me as they were in gameplay and stuff. The original authors, Gary Gygax and the other ones, and stuff that are playing with them, seem to have noticed something was lacking for their character classes in the game. They wanted to get some things done and couldn't reasonably explain it away with the fighting man or with the magic user or cleric. So they had to come up with an alternative and stuff to go with it. Largely because somebody
Yeah.
probably pointed it out to them that Bilbo was the burglar and we need to create the burglar class, right?
Right. Most likely.
Yeah. And one of the best benefits to actually running a thief, other than the backstab, which in special circumstances where you get extra damage and stuff, which is fantastic. Your circumstances are somewhat limited, but if you can get around and maneuver around somebody and be able to attack unawares, he's being overwhelmed on the front by your fighters. You might be able to argue that the thief might be able to get around the back of him if he didn't see him coming. Another
Right.
fantastic benefit of this is their progression table. Their progression table is pretty quick.
Yeah. It really makes them the perfect multi-class, right? Because by the time you gain a level in another class, say you're what magic user is 2501 to get to next level,
Right.
you split that up in such a way you can be a magic user thief and progress more quickly in thief to get that d6 hit die, for example,
Sure.
or half of it rather.
Yeah. Let's see, what else can we come up with here for as far as thieves go? Thief functions and stuff, moving silently, these abilities, they kind of explain them here. But this book is for the players. And then you go read the Dungeon Master, and the Dungeon Master says, forget about some of those things you read in the player's handbook related to things like hiding in
Yes.
shadows. The ability to blend into dark areas, to flatten oneself and remain motionless when in sight, to remain unobserved is a function of dress and practice. Yes, but it doesn't work if somebody saw you move into the shadows. It doesn't work if your enemy um, has infravision and you're in the dungeon, which is shadows everywhere. There are things that would reveal your presence and stuff. So
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
I think I've got to look at it here because I've got DMG up over here, but I didn't want to spoil any. I think Gygax even says something to the effect in the DMG of, oh, so the thief wants to do this or whatever. How ambitious indeed, which should tell you all you need to know that you're going to get screwed on that one.
right. Let him try and let him go for it, and then just pick him off anyway.
Yes.
Right, and here we go with any thief character of 10th level or greater may use his small castle type building to set up a headquarters for a gang of thieves, and he or she will accordingly attract from 4 to 24 other thieves. However, this will bring the enmity of the local thieves guild, and they will struggle to do away with the rival organization. Once begun, warfare will end only when and if all master thieves on either or both sides are dead, or if the thief character moves to another locale. All right. So these building stuff into the game to provide you high level play and give you nice uh, storyline enemies for your player characters to have to deal with. And this is a good one here too. At 10th level, Master Thief, thieves are able to decipher magical writings and utilize scrolls of
Yeah.
all sorts, excluding those of clerical but not druidic nature. Interesting. They
That
can't use
is.
clerical scrolls, but they could use druid scrolls, right?
I
And
guess that would be just basically tied to alignment because thieves must be non good.
well, they
And
must. Where was it saying here? Oh, get my mouse over in the right spot here. All thieves are neutral or evil, although they can be neutral good, rarely, and lawful or chaotic in nature. Now, explain to me how you're going to
right,
have a
so they can
lawful
be.
thief, right? But still,
Yeah, right, right.
sure,
I mean, I
neutral good
guess if
thief.
you were
He's enough
lawful
to,
evil and
Robin
right,
Hood is a neutral good thief, right? Well, sort of. He was robbing the tax man to get the oppressive taxes back, but still. Um, so you've got alignment and stuff in there, like we mentioned. But I don't think the fact that they can use the Druid scrolls has anything to do with being neutral. I think it just has something to do with basically it's how it's enchanted or written down or something. Give them at least some opportunity to pick up something other than a magic user scroll. Thieves do not fully
right,
comprehend magic means that there is a 25% chance that writings will be misunderstood. Ooh, miscast, right? Furthermore, magic spells from scrolls can be mispronounced when uttered, so that there is an increasing chance per level of spell that there will be the reverse of its intent. Right? Which would mean if you pick up the druid scroll of Cure Light Wounds and you try and cast that on your buddy there to heal him up, and you accidentally mispronounce words on there, you cause light wounds instead. Yeah. Let's see. Burglar, fourth level, they can start reading languages, so they can pick up on things. So if you're solving puzzles or something like this, they're help dig through books looking for clues and stuff. They have the ability to be able to read other languages. This enables the possible reading of instructions and treasure maps without having to resort to a magic item or spell. Now, it is worth making a note here that treasure maps in first edition Dungeons and Dragons aren't your typical write it down on a piece of parchment napkin or something like this, X marks the spot. They are magical in nature, so that you have to cast read magic or something on those treasure maps to get the information off them.
right.
So the thief at beginning at 4th level has a slight ability of being able to actually read that stuff anyway and gain those clues off of there without actually having to use those scrolls. And another function of a thief that we may want to make note of is backstabbing. Right, backstabbing. Let's get down to it. Where is it written up at? Backstabbing, striking of a blow from behind, be it with a club, dagger, or sword. Listed those weapons because those are the weapons that they're able to start with. Right, but we'll make a note here that it has to be a melee attack. It is not a ranged attack with a bow
Right.
or something like this. Right. So to gain that ability, you got to be able to sneak up and get close and personal with your target. Whereas later editions will allow sneak attacks with basically anything, any weapon. There we
Yes,
go.
and there's actually something interesting to point out about that too, with the backstab, because there's been a little bit of controversy regarding the language. Because if you look lower in the paragraph, it says, "Note that striking by surprise from behind also increases the hit probability by 20% +4." Right on the to hit roll.
Yep.
And a lot of people interpreted it. So a lot of people wrongly, according to the popular consensus and what's come out in Dragon and Polyhedron, assume that to mean that you can backstab anytime you want, and if you also did it from behind, you would get a +4. But what's really going on there is that the only time you can backstab is from surprise. Okay, so the thief
Right.
himself has to individually be able to surprise or have surprise over the creature, and he's going to
Yeah.
do double damage, whatever damage multiplier, force multiplier, and the backstab is always at +4 to hit. At least
Yep.
that's my understanding.
Yeah. Exactly. From behind, you get the +4 to hit. Right. So you
Right.
basically, I remember what page it was, the modifiers in the Dungeon Master's Guide. We weren't far away from it. There's a table for it, and they're suggested. Where did they go? Special types of attack: flank attacks, rear attack. See how the rear attack here, opponents
Right.
attacking, gain a +2 to hit, negate any consideration for shield, and also negate. Well, technically speaking, you're not adding 4 to that. That 4 is in replace of this. Right? Instead of a +2 for a rear attack, your thief gets a +4 for that rear attack.
Right.
Yeah. All flank attacks negate any defender armor class addition for shield. Right, attacks against the rear flank where the opponent is virtually unable to view the attackers negate dexterity armor class bonus. So that's a big plus.
Yeah, if they had, if the if they had been prescient or whatever, it could have very easily been that, in the player's handbook, treat the backstabbed individual as stunned, prone, or motionless opponent. Because if we look at the paragraph under rear attacks, treat all such opponents as if being attacked, but it's +4 rather than +2. So you can basically envision that the thief's backstab is against a completely surprised, unaware, motionless,
Right.
stunned
Because he's not
type of
he's
opponent.
totally unaware of the attack coming, so you can't mount any sort of defense to it.
Right. Right. Whereas a rear attack, you would probably generally know that somebody is behind you.
Something's going on in the fight. Yeah, you're not totally oblivious to things that are happening. You're not solely focused on the guy in front of you that's trying to kill you because you're always on the lookout for an ally or something of his coming from the side at you as well. Yeah, that's one of the
Right.
things people misunderstand about how combat would really work. let's see. Surprise is basically the same as stun, prone, or motionless. Yeah, pretty much. Right. Be unable to act for whatever reason due to surprise. Yeah. And an invisible opponent. Man, that is the best thing to be as a thief.
Until you attack and break it, right?
Well, yeah, but still.
Yes, as long as you get that one attack.
Mhm. And if you're an assassin, outright
Oh
kill them,
yeah.
right? Oh, yeah, because now that I recall, yeah, we really didn't detail the thief too much. We talked about them a little bit when we were talking about multi-classing and stuff like this, but we really didn't go over um, the specialness of that character. And it's not like he's a subclass; he's a main class, and he's still got some
Yeah. I'm
special
glad you
skills.
pivoted to that because afterward, once you did, I realized that we didn't discuss this guy really at all.
Mm. Another very, very useful character class. Um, over the years of gaming, it's been common knowledge determined the type of characters, the minimum types of characters you want to have in a party: a fighter, a magic user, a cleric, and a thief. If you've got more than four characters in your party, supplement the ranks of those from the other ones. But yeah, over the years, everybody's determined just by playing that those are the four most useful characters to have initially in your party, and then go from there. That's not to say you couldn't be successful with, with a bunch of just
Right,
fighters.
and
But
you
yeah,
yeah, and that's a perfect point. And you could actually use that same priority as you gain more players, right? So, fighter, cleric, magic user, thief. Next guy who shows up is a fighter. Next guy who shows after that, it could be a cleric or a thief, but generally in the in the same order. Yeah, if you can have more than one fighter, you absolutely should have more than one fighter, but only if you have one cleric, magic user, and thief in addition to the one fighter that you already have.
there's a point here we can go ahead and cover. Right. Um, Thieves have hear noise, but it's worse than at what a barbarian or monk has, depending on dungeon white dwarf. Well, we're not using unearthed arcana, so we can wipe barbarian off the list. Yeah, and that's one of the discussions we had about the other day with some of the brokenness. Is that the hurried um, release of an unearthed arcana makes it seem like a lot of that stuff wasn't really play tested or thought through completely before they released it. And a barbarian is super powerful. They progress very slowly, but it's still a very, very tough uh, uh, player character class. And the monk. Monks have the following thief abilities, which they perform at identical level of experience to that of a thief. Right, so they can hear noise, but based on this, they hear in this book they hear at the same um, functioning as the thief does. And I'll have to double check it and look it up in uh, Dragon 53 with the thief class adjustments, the rewriting of the thief that's in there. But I don't remember that sort of stuff getting much better. As a matter of fact, um, that particular magazine article took away remove traps from the monk. Right? Why can they do that? So
Right, and
open
so
locks. Why can they open locks? Yeah, they took them away. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's a wise choice. The biggest part of this particular comment that I'll agree with is that the thieves are way too poor at hearing noise in general. So if I look at page 60, DMG with the listening indoors, which we touched on earlier, your gnome, just a gnome of any type, without being keen eared, has a 20% right off the bat. So if we look at gnome, On the hear noise, he gets his 10% plus the thief's 10%, which actually makes a gnome thief exactly as effective as a gnome fighter or magic user or
at,
gnome
at first
NPC
level.
tinkerer at first level. Yeah.
Right.
And I think really that they should have at least given a thief a boost in that if he's intended to be a specialist who's better at all of these things across the board than the average person. But I don't know why they didn't, and I don't know
Kick up their hear
if it
noise
was
another
meant
5%
to
or
be.
something.
Yeah, right. Jack it up just a little bit to make it the thing. Now, granted, hear noise at 55% at 17th level is or up to 65% is really good. But I think at first level they should have been better. So that one feels like a nerve. So let's look at second level, for example. So second level thief has 10% hear noise as a gnome. 10%. So if he's a
It's the
gnome
same.
thief, he has 20%. A 0th level gnome has 20% also.
Sure.
Like even if he's not a thief, he can just be, some bread baker or whatever in the local gnome village, whatever that looks like. I don't know
The
anything about
change,
gnomes.
the progression could have made a little bit more sense if they boosted the
I
hear
think
noise
so.
at lower levels and kind of flattened that curve out a little bit like they did with climb walls.
Right, right.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I meant dragon, not dungeon. Yeah, that's what I figured it was. The what Cooley was talking about was the article that I mean, that's my favorite dwarf. I mean, favorite monk. That's the one I'll run in my campaign over and above the one that comes rules is written in the book. Right? Because it's my game, I can override that if I like.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Oh, hour and 23. See, we ramble on quite a bit about this kind of stuff.
And I love it. So thank you.
Absolutely. What else could we cover in here? I mean, we mentioned the paladin a little bit. The fact that they have some special abilities and stuff too. We talked about it because mostly because you wrote up the rangers. We covered a lot of that stuff in here. But
We did. We
yeah,
did. Maybe it's worth talking because I think this has recently come up in one of your games. Maybe we talk about the paladin and his war horse because there's actually something in the DMG about that
okay.
that might should be player facing.
You
Because
got the page
that's
open,
one of
or you
those
want me
things.
to? You got the page open. Or you want me to pull it
Yeah,
up?
yeah, I can bring it up here. Let's see if it's War Space Horse or War Horse.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of
Fortunately, there it is.
sure a lot of paladins would like to get a space horse. Yes.
Yes, yes. The Paladin's War Horse. It has its own section, right?
Yep.
So, page 18 on the
Well, let's
DMG.
see. Hold on a minute. Let's
If
see.
you've
Let's
got that
find the
open.
spot here where they mention it. Where do they mention it? Let's see.
Yeah,
Fourth level
number
or
eight.
any time thereafter, a paladin may call for his warhorse as a creature is an intelligent heavy warhorse with 5+5 hit dice, 5d8 plus 5 hit points, AC 5, and a speed of a medium warhorse, 18 inches. It will magically appear, but only one such animal available every 10 years, so that if the first one is lost, paladin must wait till the end of the period for another. Um, I'm not a big fan of that magically appear, if you didn't notice from the from the game.
Yeah, and that's why it ended up
Go ahead
being
and put the
corrected.
page up and I'll share it out. Yeah, if you
Right.
got it
So it's
handy.
a page. Yeah, it's page 18 DMG.
Oh, you want
Can
me to
I
find
share?
page eight? Yeah, you can,
I
or I'll get it
if
right
I
here. I'm
can.
sitting right
Yeah, I
here.
can. Okay, if you've got it. Yeah, I didn't realize I could share from here.
Yeah, you can share some stuff, right? What's the problem with digging through here? It goes pages. That's 32. All right.
Yeah.
What? That's 18, right? Paladin's
Yep.
Warhorse. Here we
There
go.
it is.
Paladin reaches 4th level or higher, he or she will eventually call for a warhorse, which is nice because you get a fairly powerful companion to join your group. As detailed in the player's handbook, it will magically appear but not in actual physical form. Here's some adjustment they make to it. Yeah. The paladin will magically see his or her faithful destrier in whatever locale it is currently in, and it is thereafter up to the paladin to journey to the place and gain the steed. As a rule of thumb, this journey will not be beyond 7 days' ride, and gaining the mount will not be an impossible task. You're we did not have an impossible task in my game. Yeah, the creature might be wild and necessitate capturing, or it might be guarded by an evil fighter of the same level as the paladin, and the latter will have to overcome the former in mortal combat in order to win the warhorse. In short, the gaining of the destrier is a task of some small difficulty, which will take a number of days, possibly 2 or more weeks, and will certainly test the mettle of the paladin. Once captured or won, the warhorse knows its role in relationship to the paladin, and it will faithfully serve and thereafter for 10 years. Thereafter, the paladin must seek another mount as the former one would be too old to be useful. And then they go on to describe further what the paladin's warhorse is. So um, it's the paladin calling for a warhorse can be made into a nice little mini adventure.
Yes. Yeah. And there's really, I mean, kind of something for every character class in a way that can be made into many adventures, you know. And
Sure,
good DMs will typically do that.
you know, I don't like that I've got to compete with the other druid over here to become the next arch druid. Well, here's a little mini adventure and stuff for us to get it done, so we can build some things
Yeah.
in to help keep players' interest that are based on their characters, not whatever story you had planned for the world. Yes, it is important to give the paladin their warhorse as since it is a significant
Agreed.
component of their class. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And the benefits to having a warhorse along as it's an intelligent animal as opposed to just a regular horse. Um, so there's some benefits to having it along, especially if you've got other animals or stuff in your baggage train or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. If the character loses paladinhood for any reason, there will be an immutable enmity between the character and mount, and the former will not be able to ride the latter while the steed will escape at the first opportunity. Aha. Do not put that helmet on. Yeah. Gary Gygax loved cursed items.
Yes.
And there's quite a few.
I
I
can
don't
I can
use many
imagine.
of them, but there are some fun ones. The helm of
Yeah, I can
opposite Orion.
imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, the chuckle that he had at the players' folly as their characters donned some new girdle or helmet or whatever that he created just to screw with them.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
okay, Rob. Cool. um,
Yep. I mean, he did make a lot of things that messed with players and stuff too. But I think maybe we need to understand the character of his game and when he was putting all this kind of stuff together. Maybe he had
right.
players that were just grabbing everything and trying everything on and all this, and had to find a way of making them be a little
Yeah.
more, um, conservative with their choices or something. Yeah.
I think most of the admonitions that he gives in the DMG are related to the to the players who were his friends, that did this kind of stuff to him. You know, Rob, you're a barracks room lawyer. I'm going to put a note in the DMG to say for other DMs not to allow your type. You know.
Yeah. Well, I always like this question here. I always assumed that the cursed item showed up more in his campaigns because he had to play test everything. Okay, I give you that one. But did he have to put them in every module he wrote too? So, or multiple ones. Ooh, gee. Just finishing up the Lost Caverns of Zojgans. Man, there's 2, 3 cursed items in there that I can think of off the top of my head. But that's a tournament module. It's supposed to be a screw the players kind of thing, have fun, right? Not designed for campaign play. Although they rewrote it a little bit, and released it as with some flexibility and stuff in it for you to use in a campaign. But it's oh man, yeah,
Right.
fun stuff. Cool. Well, is there anything else you can think of that we may want to cover as far as special characters and stuff go? And now, here we go. Something that I'd given a lot of thought about was clerics being any alignment. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. Monks must be lawful because they have to follow the tenets and stuff like that of the Brotherhood or whatever like this. Whereas clerics, wouldn't that sort of thing apply to clerics? They have to follow a strict order of their particular class, the progression, the way things work. There's a discipline involved with their spells and this kind of stuff. Having chaotic clerics kind of makes a little bit of unsense to me to a certain degree. You don't necessarily have to be the alignment of your deity that you worship, but you should be fairly close. That's so if your deity was chaotic good, maybe a neutral good, so that you can at least, with the neutral part of you, follow along with the laws and strictures of your particular religious organization based on that particular deity. Right. It's just a
Right.
thought I was
That's
throwing out
actually
there.
a really good point. I've given it a lot of thought too since we talked about it, because my general assumption has been, even though it's not directly rules related, my general assumption has been that the cleric is of the same alignment as their deity. So if it's like Erythnal or something, I think that's chaotic evil. The cleric would be chaotic evil. But so what you're basically saying is that in order to be able to even follow the strictures and the requirements of the religion, there would have to be some sort of lawful bent towards
Right.
that cleric to be able to be like the Shaolin monk or whatever, right?
Sure. Well, not exactly like that, but there's a discipline and a you got to follow the rules and that kind of stuff that goes with it. So even if your deity is chaotic evil, how are you
That
going to
doesn't mean the
function in that
priesthood is.
particular religious organization if you can't
There
follow
wouldn't
the
be one,
rules and stuff
right?
that are built in? Yeah. So they would be
Yeah, yeah, I
neutral
like
evil.
that.
You know. Yeah.
Right, right. The ultimate evil, and that gives me more to think about. I like to ponder this stuff in downtime.
I throw something at you here or there. There we go. Unless you are limiting clerics to ecclesiastical believers like tribal healers, etc. Um, well, to make a point with this one here, the way clerics kind of the explanation for them and the way they sound to me is these are like the Knights Templar. These are like the Knights Hospitaller. These those religious organizations. These are the fighting men that of that arm of that particular church, right? So they're going to have an organization. They're going to have um, uh, ranks and structure and stuff, and then they get the prayers and spells and all that kind of stuff added on top of it because they are, um, honoring and whatever and praying to their deity for those abilities and stuff to further the ends of that particular um, religious organization.
Uh,
Now, that's not to
you
say
know,
tribal healers don't exist. Yeah.
excuse me. For some reason, a couple of weeks ago, I looked back in the Foot's posts that Gary had done, and he said, and I think it was because of my buddy's game, one of our streams, talking about the purpose of clerics not being able to shed blood and whatnot. It turns out that Gary said that he modeled the cleric after Odo, um, what Bishop Odo from the Bayo Tapestry, because in
Okay.
I assume I say that right. I'm not French, man.
Holding a
But
mace.
the yeah, because in the Bayo Tapestry, Odo's sitting there with a thing, and even the Wikipedia article, for what that's worth, it talks about the idea that Bishop Odo was pretty famous for not shedding blood, and the historians are divided on why he did that. And it seems that this one particular book came out probably around the time that Gary was reading it, uh, like 1956, 1960, or whatever,
Mm.
that specifically attributed that sort of mythology to that individual based on what they saw
Okay.
in the Bayo tapestry,
Sure.
which is really really interesting. Um,
I can see it.
just figured I'd spew.
Makes perfect
Right.
sense right then and there. And if you're going with our favorite of weapon versus armor type, a mace is a fantastic weapon to have against armor.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Particularly the footman's mace, right?
Mhm. Well, Dan, I think we pretty much hammered on the most of what we need to do as far as character generation and stuff goes. So we need to figure out what we want to talk about next for first. Well, we could go into some more of the, now that we've sort of not exactly exhausted player side of it, we'll start talking about some of the dungeon master side of it, running the game pieces and the advice and stuff that came out of the dungeon master's guide. We can start looking over those things and what we want to decide we want to talk about that sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah,
think I think that's a great idea, and of course, it's yours and whatnot. But I imagine that if anybody wants to drop a comment
absolutely.
on what they'd like us to talk about, because I try to engage the people commenting on your channel as well.
Well,
So
we did have that one question
comments,
about stocking or mega dungeons and stuff and stocking of them, and how do you take care of that? Is it willy nilly? Is it make sense? Or that
right?
wasn't exactly what the question was, but that's the gist of what I got out of that question. That is also another thing we can
Yeah,
discuss
me
is
too.
what would be good. I mean, old school dungeon was you just went out of town, you went into the rooms of the dungeon and beat up whatever was in there, took its treasure, and there was not a lot of rhyme or reason behind it as far as that stuff goes. But that sort of idea changed form over time, and now more modern players want things to make a little more sense, which is why a lot of players
Right.
don't like Mega Dungeon because it doesn't make any sense to them, right? So if you design those things to make sense, that's another way to do it. So that's another discussion we can have. There's
Agreed.
all sorts of wisdom in there about running the game. What
Yeah.
monster? Well, this came up in the live stream we did the other day. Why don't we talk about that? We'll add that to the thing for next week. We'll talk about monsters as player characters. We'll add that as
Right
we'll
on.
open up with some of that and discuss that. That's part of the running the game part of the book and stuff that's in there. Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? What there's some wisdom in the book about what you should do with that sort of thing. We can open with that and then start talking about a bunch of other running the game pieces in there to help the dungeon master manage the players and give them a good story.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Here we are. Boy, we keep rambling on and on and on about these things. We're almost hour and three quarter now, and talked about a whole lot and didn't really talk about much at all. We just at the same time.
Just fun.
having a lot of fun discussing this stuff. I appreciate you coming on and talking about all this stuff with me.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me as always.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and cut this loose then, and we'll chat with you again a little bit later.
Yes, sir. Have a good one,
All right.
guys.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
night. Yeah. All right, here we go back again. So that was a little run down some special characters and special abilities and things like this the characters and stuff have. Thanks a lot for coming to check the channel out, listening to us ramble on about these sorts of things. We're more than happy to talk about all this because this is what we love. We're more than happy to discuss things that our viewers present to us as questions and stuff as well. We'll see if we can't get some of those things answered. Obscure questions, points of how things are supposed to work or how it appears to us that things should work. Please leave those questions, that kind of stuff in the comments, and we'll be more than happy to discuss it. So thanks again for watching this. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you want reminders of when we talk about this stuff again. Spread it around a little bit if you know people that want to hear about this stuff too. We're more than happy to talk about a larger audience. Thanks again for joining, and we will catch you all on the next one.